Real questions, real answers for real life. Come on in and pull up a chair. You're at 1850 Main Street with Michael DelGiorno and David Zanotti.
Do you know where Donald Trump stands on abortion? Are you sure about that?
This will come as a surprise to many people, but it's been newsworthy, and it's been newsworthy for day after day after day. This thing not only has legs, it's got a centipede potential. Something has shifted. Something major has changed in the presidential election. I think it's surprising many people. In the last several days, Donald Trump has systematically, on three very specific occasions, with pure, clear intention, gone after the pro-life movement. Now, he started by commenting about the idea of the 6-week heartbeat bill legislation, and he expanded from there. He started by attacking Ron DeSantis and the state of Florida that passed a heartbeat measure, which basically says that abortions will not be legal past the time of the perceivable heartbeat cardiac activity in the unborn child. So that's about 6 weeks. And the president said it and said it over again, and has been quoted widely now. That's a terrible thing. Now, there's all kinds of opinions about heartbeat legislation and how it's constructed and exceptions and the necessity of protecting the life of the mother. There's nothing about the abortion debate that is simple or one-dimensional. For 50 years, we've lived under the authority of the Supreme Court, who made all the decisions for us, and Americans didn't have to think about abortion because it didn't matter if you did or not because you didn't have a voice. The court took your voice away. The court then decided that they couldn't live with themselves under that world, and they returned that decision back to the people and their representatives, right, and rightly so. So now we've got to think about it, and it's awkward to watch people try to get there. And it's not a simplistic conversation. We have to understand that in context. The president made a very simplistic statement. He called the heartbeat bill an evil thing. A bad, terrible thing. He didn't say evil. He said, it's a terrible thing. And then he began to criticize Ron DeSantis, calling him names again and again and again. He went on to talk about the fact that he could solve the abortion crisis as president of the United States. When reelected, he would get both sides in the room, that it would come down to numbers and weeks. He would get them all to agree on the set of numbers on how many weeks, and then he would be as the arbiter. He's now the middleman. He's the deal maker. He would close that deal, and there would be peace on this issue in America after 52 years of battle. He said that.
Remember when we used to make fun of beauty pageant contestants? I know they're scholarship pageants, but that's what we used to call them.
You're not going here.
No. But remember we used to make fun of people who would say, what do you dream of? What do you hope for? World peace. The notion that Donald Trump, through the art of the deal, can once and for all settle when life begins, as if he has that creation and life authority. Almighty God, who created the heavens and the earth and breathed life into us. He knows when our days are. And the notion that could be negotiated. So I saw a meme this week. Can I share it with you real quick? It says, if you believe in the science of masks, but not the science of life beginning at conception, then you don't believe in science. You believe in a political ideology. And the reason I share that is when I first heard this, my first thought was, all right, now and I voted for this president twice, am I to respond to this candidate based on moral? Did he make a moral shift? Did he make a scientific shift? Or did he make a political shift? That was the very first thing that I had to process in my mind. And because I remember Donald Trump when he was pro-abortion. Then I remember Donald Trump running for president and he was pro-life. His most powerful moments in the debates was on the pro-life issue and was probably one of the most courageous, outspoken pro-life candidates in the history of the presidency. And now all of a sudden there's a shift. And so it naturally, I just follow the language and words, went to DeSantis. Should you and I agree, this is not a moral shift. It's certainly not a scientific shift. It's a political shift for the president. But it still should be a political problem for him.
Well, I think it's the most momentous moment in the campaign this far, because we've talked about lanes and how in 2016, Donald Trump occupied a certain lane in that was dominated by evangelical voters. And he captured the evangelical voter movement because he gave them enough answers to questions that were very serious to them, and then convinced them that he could win the national election against Hillary Clinton. And people were willing to say, okay, we don't like everything that you do, everything that you say, and everything that you're about, but here's some of the things that we've got to know for sure. Donald Trump basically won that election when he decided to say, I will accept a list of judges that if I'm elected, I will work off this list. That list was very carefully constructed, and there were some outstanding names on that list, and the president selected some of the most outstanding candidates on that list, and they now are on that court. That was a huge reality, and that's something that history will reflect upon about the Trump administration. So that part is not to be taken away. But to move from that position to now say, okay, I'm the deal maker. It doesn't matter. I'm neutral on the issue. And the other thing he said was, Republicans don't know how to talk about this, and I'm going to teach them. Basically, his presumption was, I'm going to teach you how to talk about this. It's just about weeks. It's just about numbers. He's got it boiled down in his mind. He thinks he knows how to solve the problem. Now, and no one can get inside the head of Donald Trump, and I'm not trying to. He said what he said, and it's being widely interpreted as the same. And what it's interpreted as is the president, first off, thinks that the answer to this will happen at the federal level. Now, that's not a good idea. Mm-hmm. That's not a good idea. We spent 50 years trying to get the decision of abortion away from the federal system and back to the states where people could make decisions. You say, well, because that's where it belongs. Abortion is not in the Constitution. That's what the court said. To be consistent about that, we must recognize that of the first 10 amendments, Amendment 9 and 10 make it very clear. If the right is not specifically enumerated and spoken about in this Constitution, that right remains with the people and the states. Abortion is clearly not there. It belongs with the people and the states. To be constitutional, we must recognize that. Now, does that mean there are going to be some states, given that authority, like California and New York, that may never criminalize abortion? Yes, it does. And if a person's content living in that environment, they have every right to do so. That's what you buy into when you buy into a constitutional representative republic with limited powers, checks and balances, separation of powers, and the states do not lose their identity nor their authority in a federal system.
Because we're the United States of America.
That's right.
You and I decided to do a recorded broadcast 3 times a week, and we decided on the name 1850 Main Street because we wanted it to be a place that people pull up a chair and come to, but we also wanted to draw attention to a place in time as well. And it was all birthed in a golf course conversation we had, which was, hey, Michael, it's 1850. You got 10 years to solve the divisions in this country without a civil war. Go. And as you know, I couldn't. But it was federal issues, states' rights issues. It was moral, human issues. It was all of these things. And we came to the conclusion that this country is so divided that we may be in a timeline of 10 years right now. And if we can't figure out what could have solved in 1850, how are we solving it in 2023? And that's where I come to. So if this solution, never mind the politics of it, which I think it is mostly political, but this hubris notion, elect me president, I'll get everybody in a room, I'll negotiate a number of weeks. And I'm thinking, so a group of humans led by you will arbitrarily say when life begins, and we've never really answered it morally. We've never really answered it scientifically, but we're going to solve it with a negotiated time frame politically. Wow, that changes my view. Do you remember when I said to you, if Robert Kennedy, if I didn't have the hurdle of life with Robert Kennedy, I'd probably be supporting him right now?
Yeah.
Well, he's on the table.
Yeah.
And can you imagine if Donald Trump had done this with the border? Oh, I'm going to sit down and negotiate a number. 2 million a year, 1.5 million a year. How betrayed would everyone feel that Donald Trump has flipped on an issue? But we don't with the sacredness of life. I'm getting nauseous.
Well, I tell you, Michael, I think that the more that the word gets out on this and the farther he goes down this rabbit hole, I do think this is the one issue, the one place, the one moment where the lane that he was in suddenly becomes accessible. Now, it still points out the bigger problem that we've talked about, which is you cannot beat Donald Trump in a multi-candidate race. You cannot have 8 people in Iowa, 10, 12 people in New Hampshire, and keep him from winning, because you got to remember these states and the time frame of these primary elections involve multiple elements. First, they are not all winner-take-all states. Some of them are proportional states. Some of them are proportional states based on threshold. Some of them are winner-take-all states based on threshold. It's like a cut in the golf tournament. If you don't make the cut, no pay for you. Okay? If you don't make the threshold, no delegates for you. So if you continue to throw 8, 10, or 12 people against Donald Trump, he's going to continue to win the plurality in these states, which will keep him in the lead the whole way to the convention until all the other candidates expire, and most likely then give him the nomination. Now, that's the way it works. If these people that are standing on that stage don't quickly, because the voting begins in January. We are in the 100-day zone here before the voting's actually going to begin. If they send 12 people against one in Iowa, and I was in South Carolina just last week, and do you know who Binkley is? You heard of Binkley?
No.
He's running for president.
Oh, that was the candidate that was running ads. Yeah, you told me about him.
Binkley, the businessman.
Also, our other guy with the hair.
Burgum.
Burgum.
Yes, I'm seeing Burgum and Binkley ads in South Carolina. It's like they're not playing anywhere else in the country. They're putting all their money in South Carolina. Well, by the time we get to South Carolina in March, 40% of the delegates will be selected. By the time we get to the end of March, the nomination process will basically be over for the Republicans. We are talking about it starting in the 100-day zone and being over 90 days from there. Can you imagine? It is coming and coming fast. When are these people going to make a decision as to who's going to go one-on-one or two-on-one against Trump? And is this the issue that will now break all the lanes?
The old Rodney Dangerfield line, we're so old, we don't study history, we remember it. There used to be a time that maybe you would have 12 candidates arrive in Iowa, and after the people have spoken, 10 of them, 8 to 10 of them go away. And then you go on to New Hampshire. And usually after that, you're down to 1 or 2. We have now created a new style and cycle, and I think the media is a big reason for this, that you're never really out of it. Then the deal that Biden cut certainly makes South Carolina now you're never out of it till there. I mean, had Joe Biden quit after being 4th in Iowa and 12th in New Hampshire, where would he be today? So I don't think it's going to go in that direction. And I do think there's one thing I would say, and that is not only if they don't wake up and go beyond emotion and rah-rah rooting for their candidate, they may not just ensure that Donald Trump gets the nomination. You're going to give John Podesta and George Soros exactly who they want to go up against.
Like John Podesta will end up being the man who was president till he was 100. Till he was 100 years old. I mean, he sits behind the throne and makes the decisions and writes the checks.
Well, he'll be starting his 11th term, won't he?
I mean, he'll be the president in the wings in perpetuity if this continues. So, but let's think again about what we're talking about. What did Donald Trump do to himself? We didn't put the words in his mouth. What did he do to himself? He basically said, all of you that are working in the states right now on abortion laws, abortion amendments, for them, against them, all of that stuff, all the work that you're doing.
You're wasting your time. I'm going to get in there. I'm going to be the art of the deal and negotiate the weeks.
And when I do, I'll be just like the Supreme Court. The decision that comes out of my office will negate all of your decisions. Now, I got to tell you something right now. It was a mistake to trust the court in 1973. It'd be just as big a mistake to trust any president in 2024.
Combined, Michael and David have been on the airwaves for almost 70 years. They have seen a lot of elections and a lot of presidents. And they're both independents. Surprised? Learn more at 1850mainstreet.com.
I watched a video. I think I may have already shared this with you, but I'll share it again just in case I haven't. It was a video of Deion Sanders talking to his team, and this is prior to their first game. And he started talking about consistency. He started with integrity, your moral, immovable character. And then he talked about even that isn't enough. Even that loses all of its life if it isn't followed with consistency. What he did brilliant was he told them, what your girlfriends want from you is consistency. What your parents want from you is consistency. Someday your wife and your children, what they're going to need most from you is not the biggest house, not the nicest car, not the most expensive clothes. They're going to need consistency. David, the hairs on my neck were standing up to hear the truth so eloquently and powerfully on display, because it is true. It's the only thing that is dependable. It's the only thing you can count on. If I know you're going to work hard, whether it's the practice field or a game field, I know I can trust putting you in the lineup. The consistency is as equal to your skill. When I look at this issue, it calls into question. First of all, I have a worldview. All right. So I am not a political creature. I'm not a fan of candidates. I am a dutiful citizen in a living republic with a living God. And I have far more authority for scripture. And I noticed the angels went to Mary and Joseph at conception, not birth. All right. I know the psalmist David said, while you were in your mother's womb, I was woving you together. He knew every hair on our head. I have identical twins that I had an OBGYN tell me, well, they look like they're a single sack twins. There's nothing I can really do. They're most likely going to strangle each other and die. I simply looked at him. I said, well, you're fired. Number one. Number two, I went and got a specialist who is one of the most endearing figures in my entire life. Mm-hmm. And I watched my children weekly to the point where we would purposely go get chocolate yogurt because we went one time and they were just sleeping. Well, that was boring. And then one time we just happened to stop and get some custard, frozen custard. I noticed they were fighting and playing. I thought, I think this chocolate wakes them up. So we would do that. But I visited my children at week 18, at week 19, at week 20, at week 22, at week 24. In fact, I'll never forget the last time I walked into that office, I said, whatever you do, because our coverage of the presidential election didn't end until 3 a.m. With George W. Bush's defeat of John Kerry. I said, whatever, because I used to beg him every week, let's take him out. I want to kiss him. Let's just take him out. No, they need to stay in. So I walked in and I said, whatever you do, don't take him out this week. Why? I haven't slept and I have Graves' disease. 5 minutes into the examination, guess what? They're coming out today. What? Yeah, Alex is on the line. We got to get him out. Now it's more dangerous to stay in. I'll meet you at the hospital. Wow. And my children were born. Now, Donald Trump can say whatever he wants. He can be the art of negotiation. He can have far more money than me. He can do a lot of things. But he can't tell me morally because I have integrity and biblical character, and it's immovable. It will be the same today, tomorrow, and forever, just as my God is. That's number one. Number two, this isn't scientific. It isn't even experiential. And three, it's a really poor civics political solution. And at some point, it should call all of us, and I voted for him twice, to say, so when everybody was criticizing Donald Trump for suddenly going from pro-choice to pro-life, was that just political expediency in 2016? Isn't he proving him right? And where is the consistency in this for Donald Trump? But I want to make this final point, David, and that is, if it doesn't cost him anything politically, then Donald Trump isn't the problem. Republicans and conservatives are, because they've never really been pro-life. They've never really left the sacredness of life where it belongs, in Scripture, in God's nature, and in our need to repent. And this certainly makes it a challenge for all of us, not to judge Donald Trump. His votes will judge him. But I can't support him now based on this notion that a politician at the federal level can grab a bunch of people, most of which should be retired or voted out of office, to sit in a room and just decide on when life begins. No, not on my watch, period. That's the cost for Donald Trump. He just lost my vote.
There's going to be a lot of people taking a big breath right now because you just gave them a whole lot to think about.
And I'm not telling them what to do. I'm saying this is what it cost him.
I just want to add one thing. Donald Trump is a extraordinary character. And as easy as it is for some people to hate him, it's also very difficult for a lot of people to give up on him because of the fact that he seems to somehow keep bouncing, falling down, getting up, bouncing, falling down, and get up in the right direction. The problem is, this is the first time on this issue we've seen him turn the wrong direction.
Yeah.
And not with a little passion, with vehemence. And what it bespeaks more than anything else is a lack of understanding of how difficult an issue this really is. Now, I know Donald Trump's a very smart guy, and he's made a lot of big deals in his life, and he's got a lot of money. And let's face it, he was president of the United States. It's kind of a pretty strong resume.
Yeah.
It doesn't mean he knows this issue. And the way he manifested his thoughts on this were so fractured that what I think he broke with everyone was trust. And without trust, you got nothing. You got absolutely nothing.
And without consistency, how can you have trust?
That's the point. He broke the consistency. He was going in a direction and he snapped in the whatever it was, the moment, the pressure. Maybe he never was the direction we thought he was. There's a lot of questions you can ask, but I'll tell you right now, those lanes are broken. The trust is broken. And if there's ever going to be a time where this race changes, it's right here. Now, my question to you, and we got to go, is this one. Is it possible that a few months from now, April, we'll be looking at the fact that it's not going to be Trump and it's not going to be Biden? It's two people who no one can name right now.
The conversations are just getting started. To get connected, check out 1850mainstreet.com. We don't data mine anyone or sell your information. Subscribe today so you don't miss a single conversation. We'll see you next time here at 1850 Main Street.